Hi, everyone. Okay, welcome to our Meet Bio series. We called it Resurrection. And I want you to remember that word because it's really important. The ancients arise. Spooky. Okay, resurrection's important. I also want to note that we took this tangent down this path originally from the Genesis series, but we haven't put that one down here yet. But it's going to serve as background knowledge for the upcoming Paul's Paganism series, which is an offshoot of the Luke series. Come to our Bible study channel.
Energy. Energy. You cannot fuck with this. Energy. You cannot fuck with this energy. Love to all those in the depth. All of those who are listening. Is judging me. You cannot fuck with this energy. Energy.
These are videos that go pretty in depth. First thing you should probably do is pause and read our 12 rules for reading biblical text. And if you don't like the 12 rules or you don't understand the 12 rules, well, I don't have time to explain them all. Go back to the book that I wrote and uploaded on this channel, which takes you through the entire arc and how we made these quote-unquote 12 rules as a framework of what we found after 7 years digging meticulously and carefully through the text. So if you're confused, go do that. If I refer back, well, that's probably because we actually post these things in order. So they're all done in series. And if you jump in at the middle of a series without any schema or background knowledge, and you get all pissed off, well, that's also not our problem. This is a group where we go line by line, scroll by scroll through the text. Warning, we are not language sensitive, so if you can't handle some cussing, it's not the place for you. We also do not endorse nor approve of pretty much any mainstream theology. So if you're looking for that, also definitely not the place for you. We do a video about the characters that we use in our Bible study series. And the reason we do this is sort of so that they can kind of get in your head. So we do have a video explaining why we chose the people we chose and how their sort of energy characteristics go along with the biblical characters to modernize it for people so they know what the heck we're reading. Clearly, the Roman Church was not doing their job and looking for the lost sheep of the reunited House of David. So that's what we're doing, okay? We're taking that away from them because they screwed it up. The brilliant rabbis also down there in Babylon are also not looking for the lost sheep of the reunited kingdom of David. So you're not going to hear, let's follow Rome. And you're not going to hear, let's follow the rabbis on this channel. Because, you know, sorry, not sorry, but the Bible wasn't actually written for the corrupt Levitical priesthood post-Babylon and Persia to read it through their little janky books. And it also wasn't written to be read through the eyes of pagan 4th century church fathers. So we're not doing that either. You guys can both have a seat. Oddly enough, the Bible also wasn't written to be read through the eyes of some dumbass scholars with pieces of paper that say they're smarter than everyone, but have never seen a Davidic covenant in their life. Not written for them either. You know who it's written for? It's written for the reunited house of David, who are actually in covenant and are actually the sheep. That's who it's written for. That's why nobody else can understand what the heck's going on. What you are going to hear is what you're supposed to hear, which is, let's follow the king. And let's get started.
So, we are going to war.
So this background knowledge will be really helpful. So along with the resurrection mythos, I also want you to put a pin in the whole idea of these gods overlapping, the land overlapping, and how it's all, mishmashed together, with same mythos, different name. Okay. But remember, all those lands from our History Shorts videos, go back there. It's all the same land, whether it was Egyptian Empire, Persian Empire, Babylonian Empire, Assyrian Empire, like it's all the same place. So it's just different names, different cultures, but latching onto that same resurrection cycle mythos. And so that's important. And I also want you to put a pin in the piece about Syria, and because clearly that's important too. It's a standalone, but it links right into Genesis. So we kind of paused there when we got to the bloodline of Noah and descendants. And we're going to go off on that a little bit. Stay with me because we're going to layer this in, and I'm going to try to do little short snippets. So I want you to remember resurrection. And I want you to remember, I always say it's a seed war. Genealogies are important. Keep the genealogies handy. But along with the seed war, it's really, if you even get that bigger, it's a creation war. It's a war against God's creation. Remember that, okay? All right, let's go. We're not going to go off on that too hard, but just put a pin in that, right? What we say. All right, let's start. Where do we start? I don't know where we start. We're going to start with the commandments, right? If you teach the commandments and keep the commandments, and teach others the commandments, then you shall be called the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Well, our presentation, the whole study of this bile rabbit hole really comes back to the commandments and forcing God's creation to break them. Well, I mean, not forcing, but that's like tricking them into breaking them. And we talked about this pretty extensively, or at least, pointed it out for further consideration, how this whole idol eating demon meat and idol temple thing leads you directly to the idolatry commandment breakage. But there's more than that you're going to see within this sun god resurrection mythos that we're going to sort of uncover today. And if we remember, the first commandment I called the I am commandment. That just means it's not even a commandment. Now, the 10 commandments in the Western is different, but the first one is more of a statement, and it's, I'm God, and you're not it. The first commandment is, there is actually a God, and it's not you, and it's not any of these other janky fuckers either. So that's the first one. Remember that. Second one is, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And I just think of that one as loyalty matters. Like, God doesn't care what you believe. God cares what you do. You hear from Christians all the time, well, God knows my heart. There's nowhere biblical that it says you're fine because God knows your heart. Go ahead, do whatever you want to do. God knows your heart. That's not a thing. So, loyalty matters. Following directions matters, and obedience matters, because it's a kingdom, and so you have to be obedient to the king. The next one is, don't take my name in vain. People think of this as swearing. No, it's respect my name, and don't use my name out of turn. That's going to be important coming up. Are we truly worshiping Jesus Christ and obeying him? Or are you worshiping some other deity and slapping the name Jesus Christ on it? That would be the breaking of the third commandment. Okay. or the word Lord. What does the word Lord even mean? And why is it used 6,000 times in our Bible? And be on time. The fourth commandment is be on time. And he means to the Sabbath, which is the divine doctor's appointment that he has set with you. It's your shrink appointment. It's your health appointment. It's your communion. It's the family picnic. and it's a divine appointment to set your ass straight for learning and love and fixing shit. So that's not on Sunday. If you show up to your divine appointment with God on Sunday, because Constantine said so, you're missing your appointment. So don't be late. And doing all these things means that, well, my sheep hear my voice. That's what the king said. All right. I know them and they follow me, not anybody else. Bloodlines. Oh, do we love the bloodlines, don't we? Yes, indeed we do. Let me pull this down so I can see you guys. Okay, that's better. I'm working off of fixing my screen. All right, the first one we talked about, remember we were coming off of Noah. So we have the Ham and Canaan bloodline. And we talked a little bit about, is it Ham? Does Ham even exist? Is Ham even a person? Or was that filtered in? It could be just Canaan, Ham, Canaan. We did that in the last video. Go see it. But either way, Ham, son Canaan, or Canaan is Ham, eventually lead to Nimrod. He's a motherfucker, and that's who we're pretty much going to be learning about in upcoming sessions. So that's that lineage. Then we've got Japheth. Interestingly enough, the son Japheth, they're starting to get some research out there where people think that that is the lineage of the end times war with Gog and Magog. Not sure about that. And we're not going to go on that rabbit hole now, but just know Japheth might not be all that pure either. Then we've got the lineage of Shem, Noah's son Shem, which leads eventually down to the line of David, which leads us to the Messiah, Jesus Christ, and that pure bloodline that we always talk about. So that's where we are. We got Ham or Canaan, Japheth, and Shem. The big one is that first bloodline and that last bloodline, okay? We're looking at Ham and Shem, or Canaan and Shem. Nimrod's family, really I should have called it Nimrod's empire. Nimrod built this massive empire. Now, I disagree that Nimrod is the proper name of this person, and we'll get to that. Nimrod has a lot of different meanings, and basically it means one who fights against God or one who rebels against God. So I'm thinking that it's more of a nickname than as he was actually named Nimrod, which opens up the door for us to see who the actual person was. Nimrod also means idiot in English. So there you go. But it means rebellious. But this rebellious one against God, of the God of his fathers, had a massive empire, whatever his real name was, whether it be Nimrod or something else. And sometimes when you have a massive empire, okay, names change, okay? Isu is Jesus in the Middle East. You go to the Middle East, and they're going to go, oh, are you Christian? We love Isu. Isus. So some places you'll hear Isus, Isus, Jesus, Yeshua. All of those names sort of change based on your country and culture, right? Duh. So it's kind of like, I want you to think of Nimrod's empire or his lineage and his reputation and his little family. He actually gets a pantheon of gods in his little lineage here. So he's sort of like the demon maker, and he's got all these little minions of demonic things running around. Now, it's interesting to note that, Nimrod was a person, right, in the line from Noah to that Ham Canaan bloodline down to Nimrod. We traced that previously in Genesis, although I don't think we put the Genesis series up publicly yet. But person, okay? But as things sort of progressed and got reinterpreted, you can find all kinds of things out there about Nimrod spawning these entities, either through ritual magic, demonic temple sex magic, that sort of thing, mating with these things. Or there's also the mythology that Nimrod actually is deified because the wife, Semiramis, claims after Nimrod dies that her son is the reincarnation of Nimrod. And that's where you get the whole Tammuz thing and weeping for Tammuz. So just know that it's been interpreted later that this whole underworld rebirth cycle may have applied to Nimrod, and he may or may not have been linked in with the Tammuz cycle, which is also linked into the Baal cycle. So just put a pin in all that. It doesn't necessarily mean that's true, but there's a lot of speculation surrounding this Nimrod character. So just layer that in. These false gods. But spoiler alert. So if you're in one country, right, in one part of the empire, and you're like, peas, remember that game of telephone when you're a little kid? And you're like, peas. And then the next one goes, bees. And the next one goes, knees, cheese. And then you end up with fleas. So somehow you start with peas and you end with fleas, and that's the game of telephone. I want you to keep that game of telephone in mind as we go through some myths and legends and names and similarities, and how that all strings together. There are thousands of ancient pantheon of gods, thousands of them. So you kind of have to whittle down and look at some historical characters and look at some of these legends, myths, and stories and pull out those strings of similarities. And to go down those rabbit holes, you'd be here all day and you'd get a PhD in it. There are people who actually have PhDs in that. That's not us. We're not doing that. Something else that we're not doing today. We're not playing this game. Okay. There's this game. You can go on YouTube or you can go on, Rumble or wherever you go into Google and just go, Babylonian, whatever the fuck, or Bile and Endodymes or whatever the fuck. And you're going to find 1,000 people with 1,000 series, especially in the last few years. It's gotten quite popular. And what they're going to do is they're going to throw a bunch of names at you. They're going to go, Enki, Enel, Anunnaki, which goes to Osiris, which goes back to Isis, and then Isis and Osiris, and then they went up here, and then that becomes Dionysus, and blah, 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 blah. And you're going, wait, what? They also love to play the game where they take one picture of the dude with a beard, holding a club, or like the guy with the purse, and they're like, that's, and then they name 57,000 gods, that's Nimrod. No, wait, that's Osiris. No, wait, that's Dionysus. No, wait, that's, frickin' Gilgamesh. No, wait, that's Orion. No, wait, that's Seth. No, wait, that's Horus. No, wait. It's like they keep labeling the same one picture, all these different gods, depending on what narrative they want to spin. So don't get caught. That's the generalized internet picture of the Rocky God man. So, you're not going to find out anything from those because you can't really keep talking and then look at this. And then over here, and they're trying to make all of these connections, right? But they're not going slowly. They're not citing their sources. They're not telling you the whole story. They're just saying, oh, look, this guy's got a crown and then that guy's got a crown. And then they go together and their name sounds the same. And so you have Anunnaki and Enel and Enki and then and they all sound like this.
15, all right, here, set up to go there, 3, 10, 10, 12, 15, 17, 25, 7, 30.
And then you end up after this really well produced video with graphics and the artwork, and you're like, wow, this person really knows their shit because they're throwing out all these words and myths and legends and making connections. But at the end of it, you're more confused than you started because they didn't really give you a lot of meat. They just threw random little factoids at you. They're kind of like the preachers. who throw a Bible verse on you, take it out of context, and then keep going. And then link it up with another one over here. And they're like, yeah, so like that's why it works. And everyone's like, okay. And nobody back checks them. We're not doing that here. You could and go on a rabbit hole. But like I said, it would take so much study to dig down deep into all of these. Because what I really want to do is to understand the resurrection myth, the origins in Syria and throughout Babylon and influencing Egypt. That's sort of like our trifecta region, if you will, if we're going to triangulate. And keep bringing us back to Syria, Babylon, Persia, and Egypt, and how those empires overlapped, shared the mythology throughout Mesopotamia, throughout the ages, and it's all similar. That's the first thing. And the second thing I really want to get is, regardless of the picture and the name and the century, what do they have in common? Okay. Because it's just a name game. And what they have in common is this underworld descent and the rising sun thing. And so those are the narratives that we're going to pull out of the chaos. So I want you to take a look at these entities. I hope that my big fat head is not in the way of you seeing the screen. But for example, right here, this guy, this is a hunter god, and it's known as Nimrod. It's known as Gilgamesh. Okay. So this character generally is huge, giant. Go back to the Nephilim, right? And this Nephilim giant creature person, historical person, in ancient writings and in ancient myths. There's archaeological evidence that they exist. There's archaeological evidence that they were godlike. But we're not going down the giant rabbit hole. We did that already, the DNA, the janky DNA. He's holding a lion like a kitty cat. So when you're holding a lion like a kitty cat, you're pretty fucking big. Also, when I say lion, I want your brain to think of Judah. The Lion of Judah. Who's the Lion of Judah? Now, what we're told is that Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. But we've already exposed how the post-Babylonian redactors attached themselves, the Levite priesthood, attached themselves to Judah because they never got land and they never got right to rule. So they had to attach themselves to Judah, and then they attached David to Judah, right? Post when the Persians sent them back to make all the laws to rule over the people. And they're like, yeah, we're from David, and Moses said so, and God says, we've been through all this before. And how they jankified those genealogies, which make absolutely no sense in the Old Testament and contradict each other. And we dug out in Genesis 48 in our Meet Ephraim series how David links to that remnant from Genesis 48 of the Ephrathites from the land that Jacob handed down during the Abrahamic covenant in Genesis 48. So there's that. But more importantly, we also showed in Revelation how the lion and the root aren't the same subject. So they're two different things. The Lion of the tribe of Judah is not the root of David. They're not the same thing. And I would argue neither one of those are Jesus, because you've got, Babylon and Judah you've got the Lion of Judah, which is Babylon, and you've got the root of David, which is Adam. Adam's the root. Jesus is the root, which is humanity. So humanity, we've overcome. But interestingly, this Lion of Judah thing, it doesn't really describe Judah as a lion. It describes Judah as a lion's whelp, a cub, not a full-grown lion, not a full-grown lion. So I sort of think because the Babylon priesthood came in, right, post-exile, and took over everything and rewrote a bunch of shit and claimed Judah, i.e. removed the boundary stone, i.e. stole Judah's identity and put it on like a costume. I would argue that Babylon made Judah its bitch think of it that way. You know, this isn't some cub that grows up to be this great ruling lion. You know, Judah doesn't keep the scepter. Judah has the scepter until Shiloh takes it from him, right? Well, that would be the Messiah who took it from him already. But I don't think of Judah as the lion. I think of Judah as a cub. Babylon is the lion. So says Daniel, and so says the entire rest of the Bible. So I see it more as, you know, we'll get into this deeper at another time, but we're told that Jesus is the Lion of Judah. No. The lion that ate Judah and trained its whelp was Babylon. So then you take that one and you take a look at this guy with the crown, and he had this kingdom that he ruled. And then all the way over here,
All the
way over here at the top, okay, you've got this guy, and he's holding up the lions by the tails. He's slaying those lions. He's got his beasts here, these half beastie looking weird things. Down here, we've also got the warrior hunter with the big old beard. Same look, doing the lion. Over here, this one's holding on to that tree of life, and he's got a club in the air. You often see this Nimrod character with a club in the air and a lion in one hand, or a club in the air slaying something. So that's kind of his pose. He's got his arms out, unless he's holding those lions somehow. So this is a big one for him with the club and the lion. And then you move, and in the little skinny one, right here is where he's protecting the tree of life in this ancient mythology from this country. When I'm not going to bother telling you where these are all from. These are all different mythologies from all different places within this empire. Then you've got the constellation of Orion. Okay. And right here, we think of these three as, you know, his belt and holding up that slaughtered lion. Sometimes they'll make it like a shield. But in ancient times, this was known as grabbing the lion. And if you look closely, there's the head of the lion, and he's kind of choking it, holding it up like this. And he's got that club in his hand. So Orion also relates back to this Nimrod mythology in this bloodline. So he gets around. He gets around. And here's a map of the Middle East. This entire part in red is how much he got around. That entire area, according to the Bible, is the area that Nimrod and his offspring, his homies, settled. Okay, so this is Nimrod's area. Let's take a look at that up close. Okay, this encompasses, now people look at that and they go, oh, that's a little small area. Yeah, but I put it on a modern map for you because this encompasses the Assyrian Empire, or the Persians. The Persians are over here in Iran. Okay, your Assyrian Empire. This encompasses the Egyptian Empire. Wait a minute, Kelly. How is it Egyptian? It doesn't go into Egypt. Yeah, because the Egyptian Empire was bigger than the country of Egypt is today. The Egyptian Empire came all the way up here. Okay, so it had a heavy influence. Even if it wasn't directly in the circle of the empire, the Egyptian Empire came all the way over here and straight up through for a very long time. Not the whole time, but for a long time. So that influence of Nimrod's empire is still there. It's influencing Babylonian. The Babylonians are all through Iraq. And the Persian Empire, which is our Iran again, up here, the Persians. Assyrians were kind of like north. Assyrians are like Syria, Iraq, Iran, all up here, a little bit in Turkey. We've got the Greco-Roman Empire that came all the way down into Turkey, Syria, and then eventually through Jerusalem, and it spread across those Caucasus Mountains all through Turkey and came down. Remember, Saul of Tarsus was part of the Roman Empire, and he lived right here in that corner. So we've also got Greco-Roman influencing. But Nimrod was the first, because he's the generation after the flood and the first guy to create this giant empire that then influenced all of these. We're still looking, and most of the artifacts are in the Iraq-Iran area, lots of temples and things, and we don't go there, right? But you get into their museum websites, and it's fascinating. That's what I'm going to be exploring when I go right up here into Turkey where Noah's Ark supposedly landed and where the Garden of Eden supposedly is. Because right here, if you see Lake Van, you come right down. There was one of the arguable, there's the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers here. So that would be one area of the Garden of Eden. The other one is down here at the Persian Gulf where the Tigris and Euphrates meet. And right here by Lake Van, just a little bit north of here, is where Noah's Ark landed. So the Nimrod would have come down south and then spread out his empire. So it's no wonder that all of these myths, stories, legends, and gods are all influenced by the original empire of Nimrod. All right, so it's called the land of Shinar. We'll read about that in the Bible when we get there. But this whole thing is a little kind of zoomed in, okay, on Nimrod's kingdom. So again, here's Lake Van where Noah's Ark landed. Here would be one of the Garden of Eden areas, and he just came south and took all of this land. And you can see how many countries and bloodlines would be involved in this, because we've got the Persian bloodline from the Iran-ish area. We've got Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Iraq, part of Saudi, Jerusalem. The Egyptians came up. So, I mean, we're everywhere here. He had a lot of influence. So I want you to keep that in mind, because people generally argue a lot and say, well, that was from the Babylonians. So the Babylonians were before these guys, and so they copied from them. No, it was all being influenced in layers from the original. Keep that in mind. Okay, the Eye of Providence is what the official story is about this thing that we see all the time. The Eye of Providence is the eye of God looking down upon you to make sure that you're doing well. Check it in with you. That's the official story. Okay. In the religious circles in Christianity, it's actually in Christianity, and you can see many temples, churches, places of worship, monks, what are they, monasteries, all that stuff. You actually see this divine triangle with the pyramid and the eye in it. And you're like, yeah, it's in a church. What is that? Yeah, that's there. That's called the Eye of Divine Providence. Let's put it right into your church. Well, you can find all that artwork. That's the story. It's God. Well, here's where I ask the question. Which God? Nobody seems to ask that. We just assume that they mean the same God. They don't. All right. We're going to jump into some Babylonian Talmudic writing. This asshole, okay, this guy, this is not Nimrod, although he looks quite a lot like Nimrod. He's got the same beard. He's got the same hat. He does the whole warrior thing. He does the same lion thing. He's a mighty hunter. We got a lot in common with old Nimrod, with this character. But this is a historical figure. He's got a lot of artifacts in Iraq, conveniently enough, where we were. He used to build portals to, have demon sex magic with fucked up entities. He's a great guy. We'll learn a little bit about this. This is one of the historical figures that often gets related to Nimrod. And you can see his eyes plucked out, right? Now, in ancient Mesopotamian art, and Mesopotamia is a whole fertile crescent, in some of their artwork, they used to pluck that eye out because they thought that it gave them a window to the divine. And we're going to learn about that right now. But to do it, we've got to go over to this Jewish Talmud and learn a little bit about what they say about Nimrod. Okay. He's the son of Cush, grandson of Ham. His name became proverbial as that of a mighty hunter. His kingdom, all these places, land of Shinar, Tower of Babel, all we're getting there in the Bible. Okay. And he's a prototype of rebellious people. His name is interpreted in Hebrew as he who made all the people rebellious against God. Interesting. And he's the first hunter. He is also the guy who introduced eating meat by man. And he was the first to make war on the people around him. All right. He did all kinds of stuff. There's something about wearing the coats that were passed down from Adam and Eve, their clothes from the Garden of Eden, and he stole them from Noah, and there's a whole story about that. We're not doing that, but there's so many rabbit holes. He was made the king, okay? And he was fighting with the tribe of Japheth, and we're not going to talk about that. What we're going to talk about today is Nimrod's dream. Now, remember, this comes from the Babylonian Talmud, and just because I think the Babylonian Talmud is a book from hell, it is the Antichrist book of all Antichrist books. It's interesting to see their tradition, because people who don't have our same God have this one. So let's learn what they say about this guy. Well, apparently, he had a dream. He had a dream. He had a dream. There's this whole thing where he and Abraham are fighting. Okay? He saw in a dream a man coming out of the furnace, because he threw, supposedly according to them, he threw Abraham in the furnace, like sacrificed him and threw him in the fire. Well, Abraham came walking right out of that furnace and advanced towards him with a drawn sword. Let me make this bigger for myself here. Okay. Nimrod ran away, but the man threw an egg at him. Snake, egg, Ishtar, serpent eating the egg in the giant serpent mound, Indian mound. See how my brain makes these connections. Isis, Ishtar, the cosmic egg, if you will, is a big one. But I digress. Man threw an egg at him, and this transformed into a large river, water, chaos. We learned about that, in which all his troops were drowned. Oh, sounds like the Red Sea crossing. Only he himself and 3 of his followers were able to escape. Then the river again became an egg, and from the latter came forth a bird, which flew at Nimrod and pecked out his eye. The dream was interpreted as forecasting Nimrod's defeat by Abraham, for Nimrod set secretly to kill Abraham, but the latter emigrated with his family to the land of Canaan. 10 years later, he came to wage war on the king of Elam, who had been one of Nimrod's generals. And after the dispersion of the Tower of Babel, we're almost there in the Bible in Genesis, went to Elam and formed an independent kingdom. Nimrod, at the head of an army, set out with the intention of punishing his rebellious general, but the latter routed him. He got involved in the war with the kings down in Sodom and Gomorrah and got his ass kicked by Abraham. Interesting. So according to the Babylonian religion, the Babylonian Talmud, the Babylonian Jewish religion, which many follow today, many meaning, the media people, the entertainment people, the bankers, follow the Babylonian Talmud, or parts of it. The mystical part of that would be the Kabbalah. The ancient Babylonian Persian bloodline. This is in their book. So while we're over here reading Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they're reading about Nimrod getting his eye plucked out by a bird who, when he was fighting in a war with Abraham, who is like the seed of seeds, it's a thing. Abraham is like the father of fathers. They're always talking about Abraham, but he's fighting with Abraham and got his eye plucked out. Weird. Huh. Good to know. This is why, over here, he's got his eye plucked out. And isn't it interesting which one is plucked out? It's this one, right? And when you see all those Hollywood people, they're always got this one. One is covered, one is open. I wonder which is which. Well, remember how those empires all kind of intermingled, right? Let's learn. One of them, there is a difference. So one of them is the eye of Re, or the eye of Ra, and the other one is the eye of Horus. Usually, they've got the eye of Horus closed, which is on the same side that this guy got this plucked out. So remember, this one's plucked out. Maybe I should put my my scarf down so you can see. This one is the one that's plucked out, right? They always do this, the one eye thing. Okay, so this is the eye of Horus, and this is the eye of Re. Got it? All right, let's learn about these. The eye thing. Isn't that creepy as fuck? All right, well, the eye of Re, or Ra, or I don't even know how to fucking say it, but whichever one it is. Here's the story. It symbolizes the sun god, you guys. That's why we have this. Sun rays, okay? Symbolizing the sun god. Where have we heard about the sun god? Oh, yeah, Constantine, all the way in the Greco-Roman Empire. Interesting. It's in the Egyptian one, too. Remember our map? They're all right there. Just thousands of years are passing, but the same stories with the same mythology and the same pieces are all there. It's like a game of telephone. So the sun god in ancient Egypt isn't exactly like the one in Rome thousands of years later, but close the fuck enough because we're playing that game of telephone. All right. So, well, Ray wanted to find his parents. So he sent his eye to find him, probably this one that got plucked out. Okay. And his new eye was born to replace it. He became very upset that his first eye was replaced. So he picked the first eye and turned it into something called Uraeus. What is Uraeus, you ask? Oh, it's just a snake. That's all. He turned it into a snake. If you've ever heard of the Vril, go Google, go on YouTube and Google Hollywood Vril in the eye and have a good time with the garbage. It's like this parasite thing. Go ahead and look at the Vril in the eye. That'll be an interesting little fun one for you guys. It also symbolizes royal authority. Okay. He turns this thing into a snake. And then they put this snake, this cobra, right here in the middle of their forehead. Revelation, middle of the forehead, right hand forehead. Remember that? Well, they put it here in the middle of the forehead, also right where your third eye goes. So this is why you're seeing all of these Egyptian mummies with the snake thing here. Okay, that was birthed out of this eyeball. They stuck in their head. Okay, so he put it over his eyes on his forehead right here. Okay, this also, so we've got the sun disk and we've got the snake, the serpent, right here on our forehead between our eyes with this, right, mythology. This also goes back to the cat goddess, which is why they used to sacrifice cats in ancient Egypt. And it's another representation of the Eye of Ra. This snake guy kind of protects him against another evil snake guy in their story. But anyway, Re, this god, right, with the sun thing, the sun god, was revered. Okay? He's revered as the god of the sun. And because it's the sun and the sun rises, that is the embodiment of life itself, because without the sun, you cannot have life with the crops and the fertility and all that kind of stuff. So according to mythology, this guy sailed his boat across the sky during the day. And at night, do you know what he did? He journeyed into the underworld where he battled all the forces of darkness. And when he was done battling the forces of darkness in the world of the dead, he would be reborn like a phoenix the next morning with the rising sun. They believe that this story was symbolic, and they took it very seriously because this story symbolizes the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. And this is their entire Kabbalah, tree of life, cycle. Remember that word cycle, the bile cycle. We're getting there. And this was really central to their complete understanding of the afterlife. So for them, Ray's journey was a powerful metaphor for the journey that every single soul on earth must undertake. Why do they have to undertake this cycle into the underworld, to the world of the dead, and then be rebirthed as the sun? Well, that's the way you learn to achieve eternal life. You don't get eternal life from your creator. No, no, no. That's the bad creator we were fighting Abraham with. Remember? That's not the creator. This creator, their God, tells them, you don't get eternal life unless you go through this underworld and are reborn with the sun. So the importance of this was reflected the fact that all the pharaohs, all of the kings of all of these different empires, they were believed to be earthly embodiments of this sun god, which is why Constantine called himself the sun god all the way up in the 300s. Now, this is ancient Egyptian empire, thousands of years BC, and we still see it through Mithras and the sun worship all the way into the Greek and Roman Empire in the 300s of Constantine. He was on the journey through the underworld after they died, and this was seen as the key to securing their own rebirth with the sun and the seasons, by the way. And it was a central part of their belief system about the afterlife. This brings in the summer solstice, the spring equinox, the winter equinox, and all those changing of seasons. Whole other rabbit hole on how the sun goes through the life and rebirth. And those 4 key points of the year are signified by very special pagan events like, oh, I don't know, let me think Christmas. Oh, I don't know, let me think Easter. But that's for another day. So this whole cycle all goes around the sun god all the way back with the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Persians, all of them, all the way up to the Greek and Romans. Now, it is said that while this energy is really attractive to people, yeah, unfortunately, sometimes it can get a little violent and out of control. So you don't want to, you got to be careful with the energy. You got to make sure that you can tame the energy. Okay. This legend tells us that Set or Seth, interesting name. Didn't we have Seth as the replacement brother for Abel that Cain killed? Yes, we did. Very interesting that Seth or Set is in this legend. Now, Set is Horus's uncle. Oh, we're going to go to this guy of Horus. All right, hold on. Before we get there, this underworld journey that they believed in, right, with this whole rebirth, they believed that not only did the God do this cycle, that in order for your soul to gain eternal life and be reborn, you too had to descend into the darkest depths of life and death. So you have to take an initiation step with, really dark, ugly, underworldly things like sacrificing, blood rituals, and you've really got to go with this sun god through this underworld process, because you can't truly be reborn into life unless you've seen the depths of darkness. Only then is your soul wise enough and refined enough to be reborn with the sun. And I want to point out one other really quick rabbit hole, which is the Pauline baptismal formula, but not just the formula. Let's say the Pauline baptismal philosophy. And that is, you have to die with Christ. You're being buried with Christ to be reborn again. There's actually some scholarly works out there that analyze the traditional Catholic baptism and how it is compared to funeral rites, because basically the brand new baby soul is going through a mock death of the soul and the dunking and then rebirthing. So it's, the Davidic baptism is accepting eternal life, contrasted with the Pauline baptism, which is promoting your death along with Jesus and then the rebirth. So you're following that God into the underworld for rebirth, just like this mythology, rather than being baptized into eternal life. Does that make sense? This whole death, dying with Christ thing, that's Pauline. Just saying. So part of your soul's job and your soul's journey on this planet isn't necessarily to be obedient to a king and a god like we have, but to join this sun god, or in fact, become one yourself and take this journey into the darkest depths of the underworld so that you can come up and be rewarded with like money and fame. And what was it? Oh yeah, royal authority, and be reborn with the sun. They celebrate that all different times of the year. So there's that. All right, our other eye is the eye of Horus. All right, you're going to see this bird dude all the time. He's all over, and he's a man, but then he's got this weird bird head, and sometimes he's got the sun right over his head and this little scoopy thing. All right, so this bird man, sometimes he's holding, it looks like a pine cone. You've all seen him, but the bird man, we'll see him. The eye of Horus is this one, the one that's closed, and this one is the one that got plucked out. This also associates with Osiris and Isis. Isis, sex god, fertility, Ishtar, Easter. It's a thing. But anyways, they were expected. Okay, here's the story. We've got Seth. Okay, his uncle. Seth's nephew, or Set. His nephew is Horus. This is the eye of Horus. Okay. He was jealous. And some people say that he was jealous because of adultery between Osiris and the guy, and he was banging his uncle's wife. Okay. Which is really interesting because we talked about the janky incest going on in the whole Noah story with the janky incest with the mother. Okay. Well, we'll get into this another time, but basically, this guy fucked his own mother. Never mind. Okay, we'll get there. But so Seth's person kills him to steal the power and take command of the crown. This leads to a series of battles between Horus and his uncle, okay, because he kills this guy. So Horus and his uncle start battling, and it was like this, sexual, incestuous, weird fertility battle going on. So between him and his uncle, okay, ready? Seth lost his balls, literally his testicles. That's how the story goes. He lost his balls. Horus lost his left eye. Okay, Horus lost his eye. Maybe a right eye or left eye. I don't know. One of his eyes. He lost his eye. So Seth grabs Horus's eye, his nephew's eye, and chops it into 6 pieces. Now, Thoth, here's another bird guy, man, like another demon entity. Okay, he's the deity of knowledge and wisdom, and he got so upset about seeing this giant battle of the Titans, battle of the gods, that he searched around for fragments of this eyeball. Unfortunately, he didn't find all 6 pieces. He only found 5 pieces. So he magically put it back together, and he replaced the last fraction of the missing eye, okay, with a divine magic pixie dust particle that wove together with these other 5 pieces. So the 5 pieces plus the little magic energy particle combines together, and this becomes a legendary eye known as Ujat or Wajat. And this eye allows Horus to see beyond reality with his missing eye. So because his eye's gone, he's got a magic eye now, and he can see into reality. So that's the story of both of your eyes. They can see into the veil. The veil's dropped, and they can see into the spiritual, because this eye was taken out, replaced with a magical all-seeing eye. So we've got the eye over here that you have to go to the darkest depths of the underworld, and it's your soul's mission and journey to go as deep and dark as you can so that you can be rebirthed with the sun. And then this one helps you, because it was plucked out and replaced with magical shit, it helps you to see through the underworld. So we've got our bird dude. We've got Seth. We've got the battle, and it allows you to see across the veil. So that's your introduction so far of some of these characters that these guys believe and worship in this ancient Nimrod bloodline. And we'll do some more speculation as to who historically Nimrod is. But that guy that we're talking about with the eye thing, he is actually the historical dude. His name is Sargon, Sargon. And he was an actual giant, an actual emperor. He's historically cataloged. There's some debate whether that is actually the Nimrod or someone else, but had a massive empire. So there's that. All right. Over here, we've got the Dead Sea Scrolls on this side. And then over here on this side, we have, the ancient Sumerian scrolls of the stories of Nimrod. And we're going to talk about what's written on the Nimrod scrolls in another episode. But, we look at the Dead Sea Scrolls and we're like, wow, this is great. This is part of our religion. We have so much knowledge. Why the fuck don't we think that people who worship an opposite God of ours lasted 2,000 years, our writings, and we're reading them and studying them and following them and putting them into practice? Why the fuck do people don't think that Nimrod, the enemies of God, aren't doing the same thing? Here it is cataloged at Cambridge University in 1922. This ancient Sumerian text that they're finding. Just because they're not telling us about the Dead Sea Scrolls either, but it's there. People are reading it, studying it, and following it. Why do we think the same isn't going on? Our ancient God was 2,000 years. We've been looking at this. This is the middle of the Shroud of Turin. That's an imprint, a reverse negative imprint of light from the resurrection in the tomb of Jesus Christ. That got burned onto the cloth. Check out Shroud of Turin video. Go over to the group and put in Shroud of Turin. I'm actually taking a class in the Vatican because they still can't explain how they did this. They've had artists, they've had scientists, they've analyzed it. They've had, burn cloth expert people, doctors, chemists. They can't figure out how the fuck this was done. So the face you're looking at is the AI generated face that you see right here on the Shroud of Turin. And by the way, on this imprint, you can see the nail mark right there in the wrist. Okay. You have all the injuries and the lashings on this man's body. So this is thought to be Jesus Christ at his resurrection, where something happened with light and it burned the cloth. That's my personal theory. I'll be studying that at the Vatican. And so we're still looking at this evidence 2,000 years later, and we're still following our God, right? We're following our Messiah. We're following this bloodline. We're following these commands and these stories. We just read about Noah and the flood. Like we're into the Bible still after 2,000 years, guys. Why the fuck do people think that they're not? So far, we've got the bloodlines. We're looking at the bloodline of Nimrod. We're going to be looking at some of the ancient mythologies surrounding those within the empire. Okay. And we're looking at this God over here in the battle from creation. I wonder if there's a reason why this bad bloodline with the eye thing and the underwear, I wonder if there's a reason they would want to resurrect the ancient gods. I wonder how they would do that. I wonder if they want a resurrection of their own. This is a creation war. Jesus never said, follow me or else you burn in hell. Hell was not made for humans. He said, follow me and I'll give you eternal life. They don't want to follow him for eternal life. They don't believe in following him for eternal life because that's not the son. Jesus is not the son of their God. Jesus's bloodline is the enemy of their God. Jesus is the Antichrist to their God, right? He's the anti-Nimrod. Jesus is the good guy in their religion. And their God doesn't offer them eternal life. They have to figure out a way to get eternal life by traveling through the darkness and rising again with the sun. And Jesus said, if your name's not in the book of life, you don't get eternal life. So if they're not getting eternal life from God, they have to create eternal life for themselves, which really explains all the weird, freaky science that's going on with the Bill Gates types trying to live forever and drink baby blood and reverse their fucking aging process and looking for the fountain of youth, because they don't have any hope for eternal life unless they go through the darkness and figure out how to make their own creation different from God's, maybe mimic God's creation. Maybe. I don't know. Just saying. It's a bloodline thing. And wouldn't they, if they hate our God, I wonder if they'd want to snuff out God's creation and just end them. This is what Jesus taught. Jesus didn't tell you burn in hell. Burning in hell's for the demons. Burning in hell's for the Nephilim. Burning hell's for like the Nimrod Nephilim giants of old. It's not for human souls. Human souls would just be extinguished. So wouldn't that be convenient? They could extinguish God's creation, put in place their own creation by gentrifying the DNA. That's what I would do, at least, right? I don't know. I'm just asking. I don't know their religion. I'm not part of this religion with the fucking thing. I'm over here. But why do we over here think that over here doesn't exist anymore? Because that was a long time ago. Yeah, it was a really fucking long time ago. Just like ours.
Energy. Energy. You cannot fuck with this. Energy. You cannot fuck with this energy. Love for all those in the dust. All of those who are listening. Don't misconnect, judging me. You cannot fuck with this energy. Energy.